What's up, Scyushi Squad? We back in some more Trove, and today we're gonna be already covering the Shadowhunters 35k video, or 35k series. I mean, in this case, we're at 36k. But basically what we do in this series is I give you guys real-world examples of these classes. So, I mean, obviously, I'm very, very powerful. But the point is that we're going to end up spending some time in U10, and then we're going to end up spending some time in the Delves, so that you end up having a realistic comparison of the potential of the character. Now, I'm going to end up having other videos that are going to go into detail of how you're going to build the Shadowhunter, but generally speaking, the build doesn't really change that much even after the rework. But I thought it would be funner to do a video like this so that we can truly highlight the power of the character. So we're going to end up spending 5 minutes on Geode Surface, and I think you guys are going to be pleasantly surprised before we end up going into the Delves, and hopefully I'll be able to have a pretty decent depth for you guys. So I'm not going to end up using my mount more than I have to. I'm just going to be kind of rushing to dungeons, and I'm going to try and avoid dungeons that have other players. Not to say that I can 100%, but boop, let's get to it. So even though I'm not going to end up using my mount, the Shadowhunter has a new ability that allows you to roll and gain a movement speed buff. Good lord, why did it have to be laggy when I'm trying to do this? The movement speed buff is going to end up giving us 40% movement speed. Okay, even though it's super duper laggy and I could just cut this out of the video and wait, like I said, I want to give you guys realistic examples. And I mean, let's face it, this is just what Trove is nowadays, right? So basically, when we're fighting Cursed Skulls, we're going to end up using our traps, just because they're going to end up doing significantly more damage. Sorry, I don't have bombs on my hotbar here. And generally speaking, Shadowhunter across the board is just going to be a lot better. We can shoot through walls with our abilities now, like with our Classroom ability or even just your base ability. And if you guys want more details of what is actually entailed with the rework, all of the damage numbers and so on and so forth, I do have the patch notes video out already, and that kind of talks about all of the classes, but I do have timestamps relating to the changes of the Shadowhunter as well as all of the other classes. But again, we're most of all just going to be showing you guys prime examples, and lag is just something that happens in this video game. More so than you would realize, and I can't be bothered to sit here for like 15 minutes waiting for the world to be completely empty. I do wish Do Not Disturb would work, because then I could actually have you guys not joining in on me, which, no offense to the dude that's lurking around, but I'm trying to do a specific video here. So can you please, here, I'll just create a new world, screw it. Oh, the troubles with being famous. I mean, I don't mean to be complaining about it, but I think you guys want to end up seeing realistic comparisons of how this class ends up handling these areas. And I mean, you can already see that we handle normal Uber dungeons perfectly well. And when we're actually fighting, like, that was like a full-on boss. So that was kind of the strongest of the open world enemies, outside of Leviathans, of course. But generally speaking, you can see that we just do insane amounts of damage on the Shadowhunter right now. So I think it's going to be a no-brainer how good we're going to end up doing in the Delves. And in terms of handling a group of enemies, our shots, even though I mentioned that our shots can penetrate through walls, they do not penetrate through enemies. At least your class gem ability doesn't. So they actually changed the base attack of the class, where if you don't have your class gem ability on, the base attack of the Shadowhunter is substantially better now as well. And that ability in particular will end up having shots going through walls and shots penetrating enemies, as well as the size of the arrow is a lot better. So generally speaking, dungeons should be a lot more manageable for the early to mid game before you end up getting your class gem ability. So, even though I mentioned that we're not going to end up using a mount, I'm obviously going to use Gonda to travel upwards, because that's basically the best part of Gonda, is just that we can end up doing that. I'm still not super 100% in the habit of, you know, using the Shadowhunter this way. So it's like, you got to excuse my old muscle memory, because I'm playing the Shadowhunter basically the exact same as I've been playing it since I started this game all those years ago. And only now, after all of this time, have we ended up having the Shadowhunter, well, change, like, at all, outside of when it ended up gaining its class gem ability. But, I mean, I'm just hoping that this is going to end up giving you guys a real world example of the true potential of the character, which is absolutely awesome, like seriously. Now, another thing too that a lot of you guys keep asking is, where does the Shadowhunter fit in terms of its overall power and just, I guess just in Trove in general, right? Like lots of you guys keep asking me on stream and so on and so forth, like, where does the Shadowhunter sit? Do you think it's a good class, so on and so forth? I know you guys want my opinion on it, and generally speaking, it might be a bit too early for me to say, but I do think, like, I'm fairly confident to be able to say that the Shadowhunter is probably the overall average best character in the game right now, just because of the fact that it doesn't actually fail at any categories, because Trove basically gets broken up into 3 different categories. I still don't know how you guys can join me. I have Do Not Disturb on. Trove gets broken up into 3 different categories, which is Leviathans, Delves, and Speed Farming, and Shadowhunter does each of those categories particularly well now. So that was our 5 minutes of dungeoning, which is a lot of fun. I gotta say, I really do enjoy how the Shadowhunter can handle these dungeons now. Its speed is still a little bit lacking in my eyes, but generally speaking, the time to kill is really, really fast, so it doesn't really matter too much. Anyways, let me try and see if I can end up... Oh god, my inventory is full. I gotta try and set up a Delve portal for you guys. One sec. Oh look, it's famous Nintendo Golmer. That's his real name. You guys can call him Nintendo Golmer. When he's like streaming and stuff, call him Gopher, and he really enjoys that. So we're gonna go into a depth 129, which is regularly, like, usually this is the area that we try to go into with all of the classes. I forget what the last 35k class video I ended up doing, but basically, we are going to have to do videos on a lot of characters in the game doing this whole 35k series. A lot of my videos kind of became obsolete just because of the fact that a lot of the classes ended up getting a rework. So yeah, here, let me just use my ult because I want to get my damage over time going. And it seems like these enemies have a very annoying feature where they heal every time one of their allies dies, which is absolutely stupid. Like, I don't know how this is going to work, but generally speaking, you can see we've got the damage, okay? Like, as Shadowhunter, we can handle this no problemo. And this is depth 129, and I'm not saying 129 is like a super deep depth or anything like that, but generally speaking, it's a good way to estimate how a character handles the delves. And the fact that the Shadowhunter can handle it just so extremely well is fantastic. I personally still do wish that our shots would phase through enemies, but frankly speaking, it doesn't really matter too much. You can see that we can basically spam our traps, giving us insane amounts of survivability in the delves as the Shadowhunter, because we can basically just constantly snare these enemies so that they can't end up delivering any damage to us. On top of the fact that they're going to get shadow marked, which is going to end up delivering even more damage to them. And it's crazy, dude, because the whole thing is delves gets basically brought down into what the class's survivability versus its survivability, or not that, its survivability also in tandem with its damage. So that's kind of all that really goes into play with a class in the delve, and whether or not it's something that is going to end up being good is, can it survive and can it dish out the damage? And I'm happy to report that, as you can very easily see, yes, that is the case. We can end up handling this no problem. Shadowhunter is pretty god tier, and frankly speaking, from what I've seen and from what I've heard and from what I've tested, it seems like Shadowhunter might be one of the top damage characters in the game right now, at least top 3, that's for darn sure. Handles the delves like a dream, which is awesome because this sheer amount of damage output that we've got, not to mention again the survivability, but because of the fact that we've got such insane amounts of damage, it does also mean that you could end up using the Shadowhunter on a Leviathan as well. Now the thing is, you might notice and you might be like, well, maybe you're thinking to yourself that, oh, I'm not clearing this as quickly as I would have done it on another character. And yes, that's true. Ice Sage would end up handling the mobs better than Shadowhunter does. Also, Tomb Raiser, even with the nerf, handles delves a little bit better. Draco, because generally speaking, there's two parts of the delves. One of them obviously is going to end up being the bosses, and then the other aspect is going to end up being the enemies themselves. And because of the fact that our Shadowhunter shots don't phase through enemies, it does mean that we are a little bit lacking in killing large groups of enemies that are very, very powerful. So that's kind of one aspect where I would say that the character falls a little bit flat. But again, the fact that the character overall just does everything so particularly well means that I can't really say, oh, you can't use it in the delves. And it more than makes up for it with the sheer amount of damage that we end up getting to do to a boss, which is not going to end up being the best example right now. Generally speaking, there is a trick that you can end up doing for Shadowhunter in the delves that I'll end up explaining momentarily. But for right now, this is what I'm rocking, is just chromatic and martial, just because I like the fact that we can use chromatic to recover our ult timer, because my god, our ult just takes so long to charge. It's got a really long cooldown on it. However, the way that you're going to end up kind of doing the delves, or deep delves I should say, with the Shadowhunter, is you're going to end up having an energy recharge emblem, because by having an energy recharge emblem, if the enemy is damaging you enough, it means that every time they hit you, you're going to end up using a flask, which will in tandem recharge your energy, which means that you basically get to just spam your ult so long as you're taking damage and so long as you're getting hurt, because of the fact that you can just spam your ult so long as your character ends up having energy. So I haven't really gotten to a delve that's deep enough that the boss ends up like doing insane amounts of damage like that, at least not yet. So generally speaking, I just like using chromatic because I would rather have the cooldown for my timer. But if at any point you ended up getting to super deep delves, or generally speaking, we're just getting your butt kicked and getting one shot, you can kind of compensate by, again, using a Zealous emblem, because it'll end up restoring your energy faster than you can spend it. And that right there is why Shadowhunter is being called by some as the highest damage dealing character in the game, because your ult deals some of the highest damage, and the fact that you can kind of have this chain reaction where you get to just spam this attack means that your overall damage, your damage per second over time, whatever, is just going to end up being that much more and slowly get higher and higher and higher in the damage tree versus the other classes in the game. So short way that you're going to end up building the character is just towards you know, a standard DPS build. You don't want to have anything into max health. You want to have I have energy regen on my bow, but you don't necessarily need that because you're not regenning enough of it to have it actually work out when you're fighting and stuff. I actually, okay, yeah, my bow is randomized wrong. Like, I have the wrong stats on it just because of the fact that I re-rolled during a second stat re-roll event. But anyways, you want to have like movement speed and crit damage on all your gear. And like I said, I'll end up going into more detail with a Shadowhunter build video at another point in time, because as of right now, that's going to end up covering today's video. So thanks so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed, and hope you ended up, I hope you're happy with the Shadowhunter rework as much as I am. Smash like, sub for more, buy the merch you want, support the channel, and have a great day, everybody.